Mr. Sarwar, you said yesterday you haven't, the people of Scotland rather, haven't had the Scottish Labour Party they deserve. Why did you say that?
Look, I think if we're being brutally honest with ourselves and looking people in the eye, at a time of rising inequality, rising injustice, rising division, the honest answer is we haven't been good enough. We haven't been on the pitch, and I am deeply sorry about that. And I recognise that my job is to work day and night to give people the Labour Party they deserve, so we can build the country we all need. We've looked inwards, we haven't looked outwards. We've looked like we've been too busy fighting ourselves rather than fighting for what people really care about. And at a time when I think you've got two governments distracted by their own priorities that I don't think meet the needs of our Scottish people, the Labour Party's got to be giving people some credible hope, some ideas, some vision. We've not done that in recent times, but I'm determined to do that now.
Well, you've got 10 weeks before your first electoral test, the Holyrood elections in May, of course, which are going to be, as we all know, absolutely massive because Nicola Sturgeon will use a potential victory as a mandate for a second independence referendum, of course. So that's only 10 weeks you've got to go to win the Scottish public round. And you're a former practising dentist, I believe. So let me ask you this in a slightly cheeky way. What's going to be easier, pulling teeth or getting the Labour government back into power in Scotland?
Well, look, I've been in frontline Labour politics for 10 years, and I've got to say it's felt like pulling teeth. So it almost feels like I've not left dentistry at all. Look, I'm not naive about the scale of the challenge. We are in a really bad place in the polls. There's no point sugarcoating it. I think we've had political leaders come on before and think they've got to act macho, think they've got to spread their shoulders and claim they're on a cusp of a Labour government or a Labour First Minister. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be honest and say we're in a really bad place. The first part is fighting for our survival. Second is fighting for our relevance.
You're fighting for your survival right now.
No, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the most recent poll had us on 14% in the polls. I think we're fighting for our survival. I think we're fighting for relevance in Scotland. I think we're fighting to be a credible opposition. And I hope that having got ourselves back on the pitch and off our knees, we can build the 5 years that follow to make ourselves not just a credible opposition, but a credible alternative. So we can have a Labour government in the future.
It's not a great appeal to the Scottish voters, is it? 10 weeks to go and you'll say, please help us because we're fighting for our survival.
No, far from it. I mean, I think voters would appreciate honesty. So there's no point coming on and pretending we're in a better place than we are. What my appeal is to the electorate, though, and to the voters, is coming through COVID. COVID has divided us from our families and separated us from our loved ones like never before. But actually, it's brought our country together like never before. And I just think the idea that we come through this collective trauma of COVID and we go back to the old arguments where politicians try and present binary choices and force people to pick a side just isn't credible. And what people worry about right now is not the date of a referendum campaign. What people are worried about right now at home is keeping their loved ones safe, when they're going to get their vaccine, their child's education and mental health. They're worried about if and when they're going to have a job to go back to. They're worried about getting that cancelled operation or worried about cancer diagnosis because of a pause in screening programs. These are the big issues that people care about right now. And they're the issues that I want people to believe that Labour's on their side on, and I've got a plan for, seeking to unite our country, not divide our country further.
How aligned are you to Keir Starmer's particular brand of politics and policies? I know a little bit about Scotland. I was educated there for a while. I went to university then. I do know that Scots do rather like to be independent of thought than London. Are you just a Keir Starmer light, or are you prepared to disagree with them on things?
Look, I'll tell you where I agree with Keir Starmer, and that is that the Labour Party's got to win elections. The Labour Party's got to care about winning, because all the ideas that brought us into the Labour Party, all the things that we care deeply about and gets us out of bed in the morning, weren't to be a protest movement, weren't for us to be a debating society. Is to put those ideas into practice, and we can only do them in government. But on the point of agreeing with them or such like, look, I will support him. I will respect him. I want him to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. But if he gets it wrong, I won't be afraid to tell him he's got it wrong. And I will always put the Scottish Labour Party and the Scottish people first. And actually, that's what the UK Labour Party needs as well as the Scottish Labour Party. Because if we are going to have, I hear a lot about, the red wall seats. So a lot of people have talked about, Keir's targeting the red wall. Actually, the first red wall to collapse was Scotland. Mm-hmm. And if we are not going to get a UK Labour government unless we have a credible Labour Party in Scotland that's an electable force again. So I'm determined to deliver that because it's in the best interest of Scotland, but also because I do want a UK Labour government.
Okay, well, perhaps you could prove your independence from Keir Starmer now. Where have you disagreed with him? For example, do you think it's right not to put up taxes on business now to spend more on public services?
Well, look, I do think that we should look at tax right now, and I'll give you one example of that. I'll give you a practical example of that. There have been, I don't like using the word winners, but there have been winners of this crisis. You just need to look at Amazon or Uber. And actually, we should be putting pressure on the UK government to show leadership, international leadership. So we are taxing those people who have made huge amounts of profits over this pandemic and using that money to invest back into small and medium sized enterprises. So we do have a business transition fund. So we don't have a cliff edge end to the furlough scheme. So I think we can have an honest debate about tax, but tax those that need to be taxed more so we can invest and keeping our economy going.
Okay, what about corporation tax, though, the overall rate of corporation tax? Do you agree that now is the wrong time to raise corporation tax generally?
I think a general rise is not the right thing to do. Instead, I think we should be targeting sectors that have done very well if we are going to invest in sectors that are doing really, really difficult at the moment. And I think the key point here, and this is a point I'll be saying a bit more about in the coming days, is what we can't allow ourselves to do is to think that the challenges that the economy faces or businesses face or employees face end when lockdown ends or ends when we're past COVID, hopefully sooner rather than later. It's going to take time. It's going to take time for people to get back to pre-COVID levels. So we need to keep that support for small and medium enterprise, small and medium-sized enterprises in particular, in some kind of transition fund, so we can help them get back to where they were before. If we fail to do that, it's going to cause lots of businesses to shut down, and it's going to cause millions of people to go unemployed. And as a party of work, we can't allow that.
Let's talk about the SNPs problems. They are, of course, the government in Scotland, your main challengers. You would have heard Alex Salmond's extraordinary testimony in front of the Scottish Parliament Committee on Friday, his accusations about Nicola Sturgeon. From what you've heard from Alex Salmond, of course, we'll hear Nicola Sturgeon next week when she appears for the committee, and that will be a moment. But what you heard so far, do you believe Nicola Sturgeon is corrupt?
Look, I don't want to throw around words like that, so I wouldn't use words like that. I think we've got to take the personalities and the political party out of it and get back to principles again. And I think there are some fundamental flaws in terms of principles of accountability and democracy that we would all expect to have in Scotland and indeed anywhere else in the world as well. Those principles are the primacy of Parliament. I think that's been undermined in recent weeks. A fundamental issue around how a failure to handle complaints properly. We've got to have a fair complaint system that gives justice to women as well. We've clearly failed on that. Protecting the public purse, the fact that we've had over £600,000 wasted of the public purse is just completely unacceptable. I think there's a question to be asked, a serious question to be asked about the separation of powers between the Lord Advocate. So at the moment, the Lord Advocate acts as the chief legal advisor to the government, but also head of prosecutions in Scotland. I think that is a role that probably needs to be looked at now, particularly when the government is involved in these kind of prosecutions. So we've got to separate, I think, the person that's in charge of prosecutions and those that are giving legal advice. And then there's also a principle around the office of First Minister itself. So of course, there's still a conclusion to be made about breaches of the ministerial code, and I don't want to preempt them, but the principle stands that if a minister isn't found in breach of the ministerial code, we would expect that minister to resign.
Well, you've
And
heard
if,
enough. You've heard enough now about the evidence. We all know where these meetings were or what she declared to the Scottish Parliament. Do you think she has broken the ministerial code already, and therefore should she resign now?
Well, look, it looks like it sounds like and looks like she's breached the ministerial code, but she does deserve due process. That due process is allowing the First Minister to give her evidence. She's going to have some credible answers. I'm not sure where she can find some of them, but she does have to give credible answers. There does then have to be a conclusion of the investigation, not just by this parliamentary committee, but by the QC that's charged with looking at whether there's been a ministerial code breach or not. And the important point here is, Tom, if it was a different political party, if it was a different political leader, what would Nicola Sturgeon herself be saying? She would say if there was a breach of the ministerial code, then that minister should resign. So it's the principle of protecting the office, our democracy, the independence of our judiciary, and the primacy of Parliament, and protecting women who want to make complaints. All of those things are in principle we have to look at and take away the party politics and the personalities from it.
Can we talk a little bit about you? The listeners might not know a huge amount of you so far. You were MP, obviously, before, but you're probably still a bit of an unknown quantity. what you are is the first Asian person to be a major political party leader as of yesterday, and you are also the first Muslim to do that. Others have tried to do that before. Other Asians, other Muslims have tried to do it before. Sajid Javid is a good example, ran for the Tory leadership. You tried to lead Scottish Labour before and lost. But why do you think people, including yourself, have failed so far? Could there be an element of race in that?
Well, look, I got a really lovely message from Sajid yesterday that goes beyond party politics. I got a lovely message from Hamza Yusuf too, who's a SNP MSP, also from a South Asian background. Look, I actually think that my election yesterday doesn't say something about me. It says something great about Scotland and its people. That I think people are willing to look past difference and judge someone on the content of their character and what they can deliver. But we have got still fundamental route to go down if we are going to get true equality in our country. We've still got a long way to go. We've had the election of female prime ministers before. That hasn't meant that we've still ended the gender inequality that still exists in our country, exacerbated by this pandemic, I would add. But we still got a long way to go as well in terms of racial equality or any other form of equality across the country. And election of one individual isn't going to change that overnight. Does it help give people hope? I hope it does. But it's actions that matter, not just words.
And of course, I must ask you, what was Sajid Javid's message to you yesterday? I'm sure everyone will be delighted to hear that he was kind enough to cross the divide. What did he say?
No, just saying congratulations, recognising the moment it was in terms of what it means for our South Asian community across Scotland. So that was a very kind message from him.
Let me put this to you in not an unkind way. To get a hearing in modern day politics, you do need to be a big character. That's what the age is teaching us. Donald Trump. Nicola Sturgeon's a big character. Alex Salmond is a big character. Boris Johnson is a big character. Are you a big character, Mr. Sarwar?
Well, the characters aren't built in a day. Characters are built over time. And you know, I've spent the last few years focusing on what unites people across party political divides. I'll carry on doing that. I'm someone that will talk honestly and openly about my own experiences, about what kind of Scotland I want to lead, not just in opposition, but also one day I hope in government. But look, character is for other people to decide. I'm an open book, and I'm happy to have those conversations in more detail. As a football manager fanatic, as a Cobra Kai fan, as a former NHS dentist, I'm sure I've got plenty of stories I could share with you.
Yes,
only a couple of them involve glory, I should say.
Okay, well, definitely we can talk about those, but maybe a few less about the dentist chair. Finally, let's just do a quick round of quick fire, if you can, so we can know a little bit more about you. I've just got 5 cheeky little quick ones for you. First, Glasgow or Edinburgh?
Glasgow.
Okay, there goes the Edinburgh vote. I accept, though, you come from Glasgow.
Look, I've got it. It's not just that. I'm a Glasgow boy through and through.
Okay.
You can hear that in my voice, so I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm a Glasgow boy.
Okay, fair one. Next one, Saturday night in or Saturday night out?
Listen, we're all living in lockdown. I wish it was Saturday night out, but it's all Saturday night in at the moment.
Saturday night out in the future, then?
Saturday night out, definitely in the future once COVID is away.
Okay, the last TV box set series you watched?
Cobra Kai.
Yeah, I think my kids love that. That's the Karate.
Have you not seen it?
That's the Karate Kid 20 years on, right?
Oh, it's amazing. It is so nostalgic. It's absolutely phenomenal. You got to watch it, Tom.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Second last one, early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
That goes along with your Saturday nights out. And finally, this is the question written by my producer, Sandra, nothing to do with me, but what is your celebrity crush?
My celebrity crush, when I was growing up, my celebrity crush was actually Britney Spears. And my current celebrity crush, oh my goodness, I've not had a chance to. I had a crush on Eva Longoria during Desperate Housewives as well. And my current celebrity crush, I'm going to go for Kamala Harris.
I'm not sure you can hear the screaming behind the glass booth in the control room, but they're in uproar over that. You gave us 3 names.
Is that a positive uproar or a negative uproar?
I think the fact you gave us any names at all was wonderful, let alone 3. There's an awful lot to work on there. I'd love to break that down, but I don't think we possibly got the time. Instead, I'm going to thank you for being very honest, not least in sharing your celebrity crushes and making our producer Sandra's day, and say, Anas Sarwar, thank you so much for joining us on G&T.
Thank you so much.